podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
A purple little lady will be perfect for a dirty old and useless clown. So yeah, start wearing purple, start wearing purple for me now. Hold your sanity.
Ed, how you doing? Are you all Euro crazy?
I'm very good, yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's been some high quality football. I think it's been a really good tournament so far. The best international tournament for some time, I'd say. Way better than World Cup 2010.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, I remember the 2008 European Championships being kind of exciting and open and pretty interesting. Maybe that's just the false memory, but that is my memory of that tournament. A lot of attacking football. But this one's just been terrific. Jonathan Wilson's talked a lot about proactive and reactive teams. He was talking about the footballing psyche adapting to the existence of Barcelona and their dominance sort of justifying the kind of purely reactive football we've seen from Chelsea and Mourinho's Inter, which has managed to defeat Barcelona, and there's been a lot of that sort of thing in the first...
Yeah, there's been some real contrasts, I think, in the styles between teams, haven't there? And not everyone's at poles, but there are quite a few. I mean, I guess we'll come to talk about some of our favourite games and players and so on, but in a more general sense, there have definitely been some very attacking open side and some perhaps more attacking and open than we thought. But on the flip side, some sides that have definitely set out to get no more than draws or, in fact, have just been much poorer than we expected of. There you go. I guess you get that with every tournament. I think the thing about the Euros is the level in standard between the bottom team and the top team is much closer than in the World Cup, and I think that's made for some pretty interesting battles between teams.
We're recording this on Thursday evening before the Thursday evening games, so we can't talk about the gap in quality, perhaps even feasibly the biggest gap in quality in the tournament, which is maybe between the Republic of Ireland and Spain. I'd say Republic of Ireland have possibly been the least impressive teams of the first calendar week of the tournament, other than maybe Greece.
Greece has been pretty poor, yes, although I'm not sure anyone was particularly shocked with that one. Biggest disappointment for me has been Holland, and not that they have been poor per se, but we expected so much more of them, didn't we? And all the talented players on show and just hasn't come out at all.
They haven't been poor per se, but he has been poor Van Persie.
Yes, absolutely. He's had a shocker. I mean, aside from the sort of the last 10 minutes against Germany and the fine goal that he scored, he's had a really poor tournament. And it's hard to think of anyone in the Dutch squad apart from perhaps Wesley Sneijder who's had a good tournament. I mean, the thing with Sneijder is that I'm not sure he's stood out in the same way that he did in 2010, but look at his stats and they look very good, right? Lots and lots of passes by Dutch standards anyway, and creating a lot of chances. So I think he's got 8 key chances or passes made per game so far.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of profoundly disagree with you in the sense that Sneijder hasn't stood out like he did in 2010. I think, if anything, he stood out more than he did in 2010. It's just that he's been incredibly badly let down by his teammates. So all the gorgeous passes and fantastic chances he's set up have been squandered. If they hadn't, I'm pretty sure we'd all be saying that after the first week, Wesley Sneijder's the player of the tournament, because he's the one ray of light in an otherwise terrible Holland side, and they're not quite out mathematically, but just can't see them coming back into it.
No, right, and I suppose while we're on Group B, we should cover that one. They're expecting not far short of a miracle. They're expecting Germany to lose to Denmark, and we wouldn't expect that, although I think Germany will probably rest some players for the third game. The bad thing for Holland, of course, is that Germany aren't qualified themselves. They can go out if they lose, so they have to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's not looking good for them. Lots of things could happen in that group. I mean, it's remarkable, really, that in theory you could qualify from a group with 2 points and also not qualify with 6. But that's the way it could happen. But I'd still expect Germany to go through. The other slot's pretty tight, isn't it? I mean, it really depends what happens with Portugal, and they've dug themselves out of a really deep hole with that late win against Denmark the other night.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't qualify with 2 points, but they could with 3. 3 because, of course, Denmark have already got 3 points from their win on the second day of the tournament, which was a pretty exciting moment. I mean, Holland just absolutely destroyed Denmark from start to finish, but couldn't put the ball in the net. And Denmark had basically, well, I think they had 2 chances and took one of them, essentially, to win with what was a pretty jammy 1-0. But then, you know, they got a couple of goals. Nicolas Bentner likes playing when Portugal are playing much more than Cristiano Ronaldo likes playing when Portugal are playing. Bentner, clearly the better player out of him and Ronaldo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But the funny thing with Ronaldo is, I mean, he doesn't have a bad record with Portugal at all. So he's not had a good tournament record, and that's I guess, the thing that people remember most closely, don't they? And he's not having a good tournament so far. He's definitely one of the disappointments of the tournament so far, I'd say. And he missed some very good chances against Denmark, two one-on-ones with the keeper, which you'd expect him to bury. And in fact, he was, instead of going around the goalkeeper, he shot wide, about 3 yards wide with one of them, which was stunning, really, because you wouldn't expect that with Real Madrid at all. I think he plays in a slightly different way, though, for Portugal. It's almost as if the pressure's all on him and he feels that he has to do it all himself, and he goes a little bit insular. I'm not sure that's bringing the best out of him. Nani, on the other hand, had a fine game.
Yeah, excellent. A wonderful assist for one of the goals, and just generally looked lively and dangerous and looked better than Ronaldo, as he says he's as good as Ronaldo. I mean, it was shocking to see Cristiano play that poorly. I'm not sure I ever remember him playing quite that badly. Just I certainly don't remember any game where he's had 2 one-on-ones with a keeper and not taken either of them, and how relieved he was at the end of the game when Varela nicked a somewhat undeserved win for Portugal, because although they did have a lot of chances, I think Denmark were pretty unlucky in that game.
Yeah, most relieved man in Ukraine at that moment, I'd say, Ronaldo, especially after he blew that opportunity just sort of moments before, really. And yeah, but I'm not sure Portugal deserved to get anything out of it. Great game and great entertainment, but not always the highest quality defensively from either side. I mean, any game in which Nicolas Bentner scores twice, you've got to worry about the defending, right?
He just scores every time he plays against Portugal. That's 5 in a row that he's scored in, which is weird that he's even played against Portugal that many times. They keep being drawn against each other in qualification groups. So I guess before we move on from Group B, Germany, who have quietly gone about their business, and Mario Gomez, joint top scorer, scored an absolute peach of a goal in the game against the Dutch. The spin to take it away from the defenders and then the cool finish. Just loved that. That might be, no, I'm not saying it's the best goal of the tournament so far, which I think is probably the Polish captain's goal. You know, you all know what his name is, right?
Błaszczykowski.
That's it. The Polish captain. His goal was excellent, but I just loved that Gomez goal. I love any bit of skill like that. It really sort of sets the pulse racing, doesn't it, to see players do that kind of thing. And the Germans overall, they were pretty fortunate against Portugal in the first game. I mean, it was a very tight game, and that was maybe one of the cagier games of the tournament so far. A real sense that neither team wanted to lose that one. But Portugal came to life in the last 10 minutes, didn't they? The last 20 minutes, really, and gave the Germans a bit of a game. But otherwise, it's been kind of cruise control from Germany. They still look inside themselves, and yet they've got 6 points, and their striker is joint top scorer in the tournament so far. It's kind of ominous for the rest of the teams.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think at any point they looked like they weren't going to win either of those games. I think they were in complete control, and I'm sure Portugal gave them the game when it was almost too late, and ditto Holland, really, who looked completely at sea for 70 odd minutes, I suppose, against Germany. I mean, okay, better in the second half, but it almost looked as if Germany needed to step up a gear, they couldn't, and they looked remarkably strong in all positions. I mean, you'd say the weak links in the last tournament or so was the back four, but Hummels has had such an outstanding season for Borussia Dortmund, one we picked out ahead of the tournament, right? And he's had a brilliant tournament so far. Looks really, really classy. And Gomez, you'd have said, well, that might be an issue, if only based on his record for Germany at times, but he's been excellent too. I mean, certainly in terms of the goal scoring against Holland. So they're looking formidable, and it's hard to pick a weak point out in the team. Now, the interesting thing is that, apparently they do have a few sort of bumps and scrapes and a few tired limbs and stuff, and they do want to rotate. So will players come in and be as effective? And you've got to say the depth of their squad looks really good though. So, you'd probably, if you were ranking the sides based on the first round and a half or so of games that we've seen so far, then you'd probably put Germany top.
So I guess having done, we're not doing these in the right order, but having done shouldn't Group B, the group of death. We should do boring old, rubbish old, not going to be very interesting at all. No goals, no excitement. Group A. What do I know about football? Clearly nothing.
Everyone said the same thing, but there's been some great games in Group A. One of the first games, of course, Russia against Czech Republic, and 4-1 to Russia, and they look absolutely outstanding. And there's this kid Arshavin who looks quite good. I mean, he might fit the Arsenal style of play, don't you think?
Do you remember that day when Nanny suddenly turned into Nanny's brother, who was like Nanny but good?
Right.
Arshavin's brother's playing in this tournament, not the one he sent to England, the one that plays in Russia. Obviously, the man likes being at or near his home, doesn't he?
It's, I guess the loan away has given him a new sense of confidence, and he plays for more freedom for Russia as well. And he tends to be stuck in one of the wider positions for Arsenal, and that's, I guess, not really where he wants to play. Suddenly he's come to life and he's been creative, and Russia look a really powerful force. The one question mark about Russia would be Kershikov, who I have to say hasn't looked very good over the first couple of games.
That's a bit of an understatement. The man had, for a team that won 4-1, they sure did miss a lot of chances.
They really did, but Zhegoyev, another one we picked out ahead of the tournament, has been outstanding. Obviously, the goals he scores say that much, but he's also been dovetailing really nicely with Arshavin, and Russia have got a really kind of flexible front three-ish there, and they look really good, and the Czechs are just about still in it, aren't they, after that hammering, but they've come back into it with a victory over Greece now. And Poland, it's touch and go whether they're going to go through, I suppose. I mean, they put together such a passionate display, didn't they, in the opening game, and didn't get anything out of it.
Well, they got a point.
And then another one in the next game, right? And so, I mean, that's going to be a really close group as well, and you can't say for sure that Poland get through. You kind of hope they do, because the Polish people clearly desperately want it, and scenes in Warsaw after their game the other night were pretty stunning.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of passionate highlights of the tournament so far have been the Ukraine game and the Polish games, as you would expect, given they're the host nation to the tournament. But that Poland-Russia game was one of the most charged atmospheres I can remember. I don't know if you saw the link of the video that I sent you over Twitter that was Polish fans celebrating in one of the fan parks in Warsaw.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it happened on Russia Day. A bunch of crazy Russians marched through Warsaw, which, if anyone isn't like up on European history, those countries go way back. You know, lots of conquering and reconquering. Russian fans unveiling a picture of the prince who liberated Russia in the 1700s with the emblem "This is Russia" underneath, which either was a kind of, statement of nationalistic intent, or was saying Warsaw is part of Russia, which is obviously not particularly politically correct statement. And then that Russian team, who had blown the Czech Republic absolutely out of the water, really struggled to contain a resurgent Polish side. And I think actually you could say that's a huge point for Poland. I think most people would have expected them to be beaten quite heavily by a technically much more gifted side, but Polish made themselves very hard to break down.
Well, that man Błaszczykowski again, who had a pretty poor game, got to say, but spanked in a superb goal.
Yeah, I mean, some impressive play down the right-hand side from the Polish side. Lewandowski looks impressive, although he hasn't exactly lit up the tournament so far, but he looks bright and runs into channels. They won't stop going on about him being linked to Manchester United. I think that's a no-go myself. What do you think?
It's an absolute definite, not a chance in hell, no-go. I don't think there's any suggestion United are even interested, even if Dortmund were prepared to sell, which they're not.
Right, so that's a nice one. Talking of Dortmund players, United are linked to Jonathan Pearce calling Hummels yesterday a potentially future Manchester United player.
Well, he definitely looks United class and style and all of it. He would be a fantastic buy. Unfortunately, United should have bought him last summer, and his price will be in excess of 20 million or so, euros, pounds, dollars, whatever currency you want to think about here. Probably way out of our budget.
So that Polish game against Russia might have been my single favourite game of the tournament, just for sheer kind of thrills and spills. But the game in which I've been most impressed by the football was, perhaps unsurprisingly, Italy against Spain in Group C. A 3-5-2 against a 4-6-0. That's the dream. That is the dream. Incredible scenes.
Well, the real dream is to have no strikers on either side, of course.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, Barcelona have pioneered the 2-8-0 formation, which they've been playing for some time now. So Spain haven't quite got all the way there, but yeah, not far off. It's listening to Del Bosque. He's interesting when he explains this, because I think it's a real difference, and it's a kind of case study in difference in mentality between people. In the English media, we're all going, how can you do this? No strikers on the team, no strikers on the team. And he was very calm about it and said, look, we played with a 9. Now, it might not be your idea of a 9, but it's my idea of a 9. And David Silva is an attacking player, Cesc Fabregas is an attacking player, Andres Iniesta is an attacking player. It really doesn't matter who we play there, they're all attacking players. And he's very calm about it, and there's no sense of panic that they're not going to score enough goals or anything like that. And he's quite content to leave his sort of forwards, traditional forwards, and Llorente and Negredo and Torres on the bench.
I mean, I actually think that 4-6-0 did not work. I was rooting for it because I like the art project aspect of it. But, I mean, first of all, full credit to Prandelli for going with a back 3 against no strikers. Love it. Absolutely love it. What is more Italian than that? I mean, actually, it was a very fluid, very attacking, very impressive counter-attacking Italian. I didn't mean attacking, I mean counter-attacking Italy, who once Balotelli had gone off and Natale came on, looked incredibly dangerous, the more dangerous the two. But I would really strongly argue that the 4-6-0 just did not work for Spain. There were so many times when their midfield players had opportunity and possession. There was just no one ahead of them to pass to. It's all very well saying Silva's attacking, Fabregas is attacking, but their mentality is not that of a striker. And when Torres came on the Football Ramble, Luke Moore was saying he kind of proved the point. Ironically, of course, he didn't score any goals because he's Fernando Torres, but he made so many chances with his movement. He looked really dangerous. And what has Fernando Llorente done to Vincenzo Del Bosque?
It's not quite as simple as that. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Spain suddenly looked like they were going to create chances when Torres came on, and the striker's movement, which was very different to the very false 9 of Cesc Fabregas, who often played in a midfield position, but as the forward player. I get what you mean in terms of looking more effective, but it's not how Del Bosque wants them to play. I mean, he does want them to play with players breaking from deep. He wants them to play with that false 9, right?
Have 5 of them and 1 striker.
No, but that's the point I'm making. He doesn't want them to play like that. It's got nothing to do with needing a striker up there, needing someone ahead of the ball as the focal point. That's not how he wants them to play. He wants someone to come deep, and he wants other midfielders to break ahead of the ball, and that was the problem, not their tactical system, in Del Bosque's mind.
I am not by any means a kind of Neanderthal when it comes to football. As I say, I was rooting for the 4-6-0. I was loving seeing that kind of tactical innovation at this level of football.
It wasn't a 4-6-0. I know we were making fun of it, but it's just not how they played, right? Just because Cesc Fabregas is a midfielder in our pigeonholes, that we all do, because that's how we kind of quantify what football is, doesn't mean that's how they played.
I haven't got a heat map in front of me. You can say it's a 4-5-1 if you like, but that's 4-5-1 in the hole, not one up front. As you say, it was an incredibly false 9. They normally have forward players, right? They normally have a striker on the pitch.
Just because we will determine them as a striker, Del Bosque is saying that is not true.
He's wrong!
Well, I mean, I'm thinking that 2 European Cups and a European Championship and a few La Ligas and stuff qualifies him to say what he's saying here, and he said it very clearly, right? In our English minds, we're going, there's no strikers, this is bizarre, we don't get it, and we mock it and we point at it and we laugh at these strange people possessed by demons.
There's a kind of wonderful genius to the tactics, because Italy have got that 3 at the back, and it kind of made them somewhat redundant in a kind of one-to-one sense. But they were worked incredibly hard, and actually De Rossi's performance at sweeper, regardless of the fact that he had one sleeve longer than the other, it would have been my favourite individual performance of the tournament anyway, even if it wasn't for the sleeves. The sleeves just added a level of magic to it, which, I don't know, it's hard to quantify in words. Anyway, all I'm saying is I felt like against Italy they would have done better with their plan B than they did with their plan A.
We'll leave this one to the listeners, because you can go off to UEFA's official site and have a statistics section with the heat maps there. And here's the word on this one: there is no difference between Italy and Spain. None. If you can spot the difference, there's a prize on offer. Go off and do it. And anyway, look, Italy, very impressed with them. I thought they were good, and in their own way they were very tactically innovative as well. I mean, you said 3, but in truth it wasn't really be 3 because it was 3 in possession. Prandelli actually said this afterwards, because he rejected the notion that there were 5 defenders. He said there were 3 defenders, and when they defended, they went back to 4 because Pirlo sat in the back
Love
4.
Love it!
Which became back 4, and with 2 midfielders in there. And so, following the Spanish path of not actually playing any defenders or strikers.
Brilliant!
And then when they attacked, they went with 3, right? And the wing-backs were truly wing-backs, and they really pushed forward into midfield. So I thought they were very innovative too. Clearly they didn't have a lot of possession, and it's no surprise, because that's Spain play, that short passing tiki-taka style that doesn't give the ball away, ever, and they cherish it, unlike England.
Only England had less possession than Italy in the first round of the tournament.
Right, yeah, well, and Greece, I think, in the first game. But so they didn't have a lot of possession, but they were effective with the possession they had, right? And they did look dangerous, and they looked like they could score, and they caused Spain problems, and Spain will certainly have to think about whether they need to follow your advice and suggestion and change their tactical makeup in the future when they come across better teams than Italy, because there are better teams than Italy in this tournament.
I think Italy are going to win. That's my little sneak. I think Germany are the best team in the tournament. I think Spain are probably also the best team in the tournament. They're just wonderful in different ways. But I just have this little sneaky feeling that Italy are going to win this tournament. It's a complete nonsense, obviously, but I just have a little suspicion. But the Balotelli miss, it was extraordinary when he took the ball off Ramos, then sort of went and stood in front of the goalkeeper for a bit to let Ramos have a chance to come back and tackle him. It looked like he forgot where he was, who he was, what was going on, what the round thing at the bottom of his leg was, all that stuff.
Yeah, bizarre, wasn't it? Really bizarre. And obviously he was hauled off very shortly afterwards. Prandelli said it's not a punishment, but it kind of seemed like it, didn't it? And absolutely typical that Di Natale would come on and scored with basically his first touch.
Yeah, gorgeous. Anyway, that was my pick of the first round of games. What was yours?
Well, for sheer quality, I think that was the standout game. I really enjoyed Germany-Holland for different reasons, because I thought Germany just looked awesome in terms of their control of it. I enjoyed Poland-Russia for the passion on show, and I even enjoyed, and we'll come on to Group D, Ukraine beating Sweden, which was technically an awful game. Ukraine definitely played better football, but I think pretty poor standard of football all round. So I enjoyed that one. I definitely did not enjoy the England game. Again, we'll talk about this in a bit. I didn't much enjoy the Republic of Ireland game. I thought they were passionate, the fans were great, but they were awful, and Croatia just kind of brushed them aside so easily. Denmark and Portugal, as I said earlier, I thought was really entertaining. So, some good stuff there, and in between some not so good stuff.
Yeah, even the games which have not been so good. The Croatia-Ireland game had a lot to enjoy if you were watching it as a neutral, because Croatia was so excellent. I think very unlikely that the Republic are going to be able to qualify now, because they have to get stuff out of Spain and Italy. I don't think that's going to be very easy for them whatsoever. Obviously, they're just way behind in terms of technical ability, the other teams in their group. And, a lot was made of Trapattoni, well organised and defensive, and within 3 minutes they made a massive howler and put them hugely on the back foot. Nicked one then from a set piece, but then it was just, they were just all at sea at the back. And if you're a kind of tight, well organised side and you lose the ability to be tight and well organised, then you're really going to struggle.
Yes, and that was the thing. We talked about them ahead of the tournament and how they'd had so many clean sheets and they'd built on being, as you say, tight and well organised and not conceding goals and taking advantage of the few chances they get. So to concede 3 goals, which were all preventable, Trapattoni must have gone mad afterwards. And the Irish players must have done too, because there'd been so much talk beforehand about how this was their big chance. This game was their big chance. And so, yeah, we're recording ahead of the game with Spain, so chances are they'll get absolutely spanked, and that'll be them in real trouble with Italy to come.
Yeah, and I think the 4-6-0 would be extremely effective against the Republic of Ireland. But anyway, that's a debate we can keep having off the air. So Group D, brave John Terry and his English Lions. Now, actually, I really did quite enjoy the England game. I was actually really rather impressed with England. You said in the preview, and nobody would ever fault you for saying this, because it's clearly been the truth, that Gerrard will not have the tactical discipline to sit in the 2 banks of 4 and will cause all sorts of problems for England. He did. He was incredibly tactically disciplined. His passing was kind of okay. I thought Danny had a really good game. Just the player you want, the lead in the line, I think. I think he's just getting better and better, isn't he, Danny Welbeck? And to see him kind of be fairly impressive in a very ordinary England side was good to see. Actually, John Terry had a pretty good game. The thing that I was most disappointed with was France. They really were lacking going forward, and that one screamer from Nasri where, in fact, then Gerrard and Parker had been sucked so far deep that there was no way that Joe Hart could see through the 150 players in the England box to save it. But apart from that screamer from Nasri, they were really lacking. I thought Karim Benzema was playing way too deep. I thought they were letting Nasri and Ribéry get too far away from Benzema, and I thought Ribéry looked really ordinary, and I've seen him look ordinary a number of times. I assume that he's an excellent player because everyone tells me he is, but I don't ever remember really seeing too many standout performances from Ribéry on the huge stage.
Well, I mean, I'll say I disagree with many points there. Almost all of them, in fact. So
excellent.
Look, I'm not sure I found anything about England's performance impressive. I mean, I suppose if you just want to sit in front of your goal and defend, then that's impressive.
Well, you've got to play to your strengths, right? They're not very good.
Yeah, fine. They're not very good, and that's what they played to their strengths. They also played to get lucky, right? Which is what they did. So against France, they did concede from one of those longer shots, and France had a lot of those. And the problem with the French is they weren't able to come up with another plan to get move England out of position, right? And England's tactics are all entirely 100% about shape. So that's point one. France weren't good enough to break that down for England, and fine, England probably, whether they knew that or not, they played the game plan, but they did concede to that long shot. They could have conceded more. I mean, France had 7 shots inside the box, 13 outside, 20 in total. That's 4 times as many as England managed, and no surprise there. But they very nearly conceded in the same way against Belgium in that friendly the week beforehand, and it hit the post, right? And so they got lucky there. If you play this system, that's what you're going to have to rely on. And Chelsea got very lucky against Barcelona and Bayern Munich. I mean, incredibly, really. I mean, if your tactical system is based on hoping that the other team miss their chances, then you've got a real problem. And we'll see with England. There's been some talk about whether they'll be able to open out for future games, and Gerrard said, with respect to Sweden, they're not France, and we think we can be more ambitious. But I have to say right now, ahead of the game, we'll test this one when we do our podcast next week, I don't think England will be able to change their mentality sufficiently enough to make a real difference, and I think they will have a problem with this. I don't think you press the switch and you go from being ultra negative to attacking, and you just do it like that with basically the same players. So that's another point I wanted to make. Gerrard, I think he had a real problem. I don't think he works in a 2 in midfield, and the fact that he was 15 yards away from Nasri when Nasri scores tells me that didn't work. He wasn't in the right position. He should have been, as the man that's furthest forward in that duo in that 2, he should have been the man challenging, and he didn't. He was nowhere near. He can't play that role. I just don't think he knows how to play it, and I think that will be a problem for England going forward. Not least because Parker, it seems, is crocked, and Jordan Henderson is now going to be playing the holding role, Let
me just very quickly clarify one thing, and then you can carry on with your quite correct rebuttal. When I say impressive, I don't mean they were actually impressive relative to the other teams in the tournament. They were impressive relative to their own strengths. So
it's about expectations.
Yeah, exactly. My expectation was so low that the fact that they got a jammy 1-1 against a very under-impressive French side kind of impressed me. So, but do continue.
I had this debate with one of the guys from Eurosport, and his average rating was, for the English players, on average, for the 11, was higher than the French players. And I was like, are you yanking my chain here, mate? I mean, do you really think England were better than France? So, I mean, if your expectations are that England were terrible and they're better than that, then of course you readjust yourself. But objectively, France had, as I said, 4 times as many shots, 2/3 of the possession in the key attacking areas, so key territory. They twice as many passes, 600 passes to 300, twice as many in the attacking area. So they weren't just passing it around at the back, they were passing it around in England's final third and not being able to find a way through. And that was the thing that was good about England. It's the one area of John Terry's game that he can do. If it's playing very deep and defending, he can do it. If it's an open game where there's space in behind, he's got a massive problem. And this is one of the things that might cause England problems against Sweden. So, so if your expectations are in the gutter and you're looking at the stars, to bastardize a quote, then fine, England did better than many people have expected pre-tournament. We'll see whether they can flip that switch and suddenly become an attacking side. I think they're going to have real problems with it.
I'd just like to say, at no point in what I said did I indicate that I think England are going to do well in this tournament moving forward, because I think you're absolutely right, and we've seen it so often. I mean, if England had conceded first, the game would have been very different. I mean, that's one of the ways in which they got lucky, was they scored first, and when you set up like that, you darned well better score first.
It's the only strategy they have. Look, maybe it will be different against Sweden. Sweden, as we've seen, are not very good, and they're not very technically sound. So England ought to have a decent share of possession this time. It might not be a very good game. Ukraine might be different though, because Ukraine did keep the ball in their opening game. That was one of the good things about them. They looked like they had absolutely no penetration for most of the game until a hobbling Shevchenko suddenly got up and scored twice, much to my annoyance after I'd written him off in very public fashion.
I just loved that game. Now, with genuine apologies to our Swedish listeners, especially at Myrta123, who's one of the Rantcast's biggest fans, I must apologise to all the people of Sweden, but I loved seeing those Sheva goals and the crowd going nuts and him, just the whole ridiculous, romantic fairy tale of it all. Actually, that game makes it very difficult for England because Sweden desperately need a win, and then they get to play Ukraine, who know that a win will be enough to take them through at home, whatever happens in the France-Ukraine game. So it's going to be really difficult for England to even qualify from this group now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's interesting that you talked about Sweden's technical prowess. The thing is, their overall percentage technical. If you take all their players and you give them a score of 1 to 100 on technical ability, and then you average it all out, I'm sure that will still be higher than England's overall average, because they have Zlatan, whose technical ability is 99/100. Any game in which Zlatan Ibrahimovic scores and Andrei Shevchenko scores is all right with me. Glorious old-time AC Milan against current Milan.
I mean, I thought Zlatan had an okay game. I mean, he's clearly a cut above, isn't he? Everyone else in that same team, and kind of knows it as well. And playing in a slightly different position than we might expect him to play at club level, for most of his career, and a little bit deeper. Not quite in midfield as they try to suggest on the TV, but kind of floating in between. And he caused some problems for Ukraine, but in the end, Sweden were just overwhelmed. I mean, a little bit with Ukraine's ability to keep the ball, which Sweden just could not do. They're too English about it, too impatient, too willing to knock the ball long, too willing to look for a killer pass when they didn't need to do that, and they could try and work some space, which is what Ukraine did. And it's really funny though with Shevchenko, because he was hobbling around. He just did not look fit, and you just thought he really shouldn't. I said he was in the team out of sentimental reasons, and of course he scored twice in very quick succession as soon as I said that.
Yeah, no better reasons than sentimental reasons as far as I'm concerned. What's the point of football without sentiment? It's like the whole crowd going, Sheva! It's just brought a little tear to the eye, that did. I loved seeing that. So anyway, that's definitely enough about England, that's for sure. Although I guess we need to return to them when we talk about the United players in action. Not a brilliant tournament so far for United players, as I don't think World Cup 2010 was either. Nani, as you said, excellent for Portugal in their second game. Pretty nondescript in their first game.
Yes, he was. Yeah, I mean, he made up for it in the game against Denmark, and when he was very good and he was very attacking. He played some really good passes as well and really looked on it. Yeah, not so good in the game against Germany. I guess Danny Welbeck did all right. Weird thing about this, obviously there's tons of statistics and stuff. The official UEFA statistics, which they've now revised, had Danny Welbeck misplacing half of his passes, which he didn't do. He didn't get the ball very often. I think that was the problem with Welbeck. But when he got it, he was neat and tidy, and he laid it off to various people. He didn't have a single shot in the game, and that says a lot about England, I suppose, but also says something about Welbeck. He was interlinking play when he could, but he really wasn't an attacking threat. Ditto Ashley Young as well, really. I mean, aside from that one pass he played for James Milner in 3 or 4 minutes into the game, which should have resulted in a goal, of course, for England. He really wasn't much of a threat too, and that might be a bit of a concern for Hodgson. Phil Jones didn't play. Evra had a decent game for France, quite vocal after the game as well about England's tactics, as you'd expect with Patrice, I think. And so, yeah, mixed tournament for United players overall.
Not brilliant so far, but it's very early days. I mean, you always see this with tournaments, that it's really dangerous to kind of characterise them after the first round of games. And we've had a trickle of the second round of games, but the narrative of the tournament, narrative of players' performance at tournaments tends to be written in the latter stages, doesn't it? That's when it really comes to life.
Yeah, totally. Although, look, there have been some impressive players. Outside the United players, I thought Iniesta and Pirlo were outstanding in that Italy-Spain game.
De Rossi.
If we mentioned, De Rossi was great at the back. Schweinsteiger's been superb. I mean, how good was he against Holland? He just controlled the entire midfield. Khedira has impressed me in a way, because he's played in a much more attacking way than he has done in the past for Germany. Germany as a whole have just become more offensive since the World Cup, and Kantira's bursting forward is more of a box-to-box player where you thought he was a defensive player before. Schneider we mentioned, Hummel's outstanding, Blaženovski rubbish, but the passion.
What a hit, son! What a hit!
Mandzukic from Croatia, fantastic.
Modric, oh my God, Modric's performance against the Republic, that was a sight to behold. That was.
I hope Ferguson had Wood there and he was on the phone to the Glazers begging them to release some funds.
Schweinsteiger and Modric should be I don't mean both of them or even either of them are realistic, but at watching the tournament you just think which of these players would most transform United, and for me it's those two.
Well, both of them would be awesome. Yeah, I mean it's very true. Disappointments, Ronaldo.
Yeah, he's having a shocker so far.
Almost anyone in the Dutch side.
Yeah, apart from Wes. I mean, in terms of relative form, you'd have to say Van Persie's got to be the biggest disappointment, because you kind of expect Robin to cut inside and blast it over the bar a lot, but you expect Van Persie not to fall over every time he's 6 yards in front of goal.
Yeah, he's had a shocker. I mean, obviously he scored that goal, but he's had a pretty poor tournament overall, and Huntelaar didn't like it, did he? It was quite obvious that he felt he should be in the side, and maybe on form he should be. Who knows? I mean, we might see in the last game they might make some. Van Marwijk might make some changes there.
And when you say Van Marwijk, do you mean Ian Rush?
Yeah, that's right. Silver fox that he is.
I'd like to offer an official apology to Klaas-Jan Huntelaar for suggesting that his 40 goals last season came in the Dutch league, when of course they came in the German league.
Very different.
Quite a different.
So major talking points from the tournament. I mean, tactics we mentioned. Thought it's been really interesting that the amount of teams that have been really offensive. 4-2-3-1 is the definite dominant formation as it was at World Cup.
Yeah, no surprise.
No surprise really, but it just feels like a much more offensive tournament, doesn't it? There's so much negative football in South Africa, and this one not, even though in some games we have had teams parking the bus, England, Ireland, Greece at times, Holland, how negative have they been?
Yeah, De Jong and Van Bommel, that's got to be the strangest team selection of the tournament. You could say all you want, as I did, about Spain not picking a recognised striker, but the fact that Holland went with De Jong and Van Bommel in that first game, I mean, I guess the logic dictates it's the first game, you absolutely don't want to lose, so you play with your two defensive midfielders, Van Bommel and De Jong, but you're against Denmark, which is probably the weakest side in the group, although you could argue that they qualified ahead of Portugal in qualification, and they're obviously ranked ahead of them in the oh-so-reliable FIFA rankings. But Denmark definitely not as good as Holland, so why not play that more attacking player? And then the two defensive midfielders is clearly not working, but Van Marwijk seems scared to change it because he's up against Germany. He doesn't want, say, Van der Vaart and Van Bommel to be overrun, but it really did make the Dutch less effective, and a lot of Robin's ridiculous greediness was to do with the fact that there weren't the players buzzing around him that there would have been if Van der Vaart was playing.
It's been hugely disappointing overall, and remarkable really, because they did play some good football in the World Cup up until the final, and they played some decent football during the qualification period. They've been, it's not total football from the Dutch. A little montage before the Germany-Holland game, a few of the people speaking, and one of the talking heads said it's almost like they've flipped and Germany's playing the total football and Holland's playing the functional football. And I thought that was a good summary really, and Holland has been functional but not functioning functional football.
Dysfunctional functional side like England.
It's a real shame. It probably means Bert Van Marwijk's job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a surprising way that he got it, because he's not had a stellar career really as a coach, and he's not a big name, and you expect one of the big names to come take it. Other talking points from the tournament, I mean, aside from the football, there's been the whole racism issue, and we haven't really seen it in the grounds, though, I don't think.
The games are on and you're living your life, and so sometimes the sound's not the highest and half paying attention while you're doing other things, but I've not seen anything that, anything particularly terrible, and that's kind of a relief. I guess maybe some of those big flashpoints haven't happened. The one big flashpoint was the game against Poland, the Poland-Russia game in Warsaw on Russia Day, but that's not about football, is it? It's about politics.
It's politics, and UEFA have come out and handed down a 6-point suspended ban to Russia. So it's really not much of a punishment at all, unless something another big incident happens. So and generally speaking, the crowds have been pretty good, I think. I mean, certainly some of the bigger nations brought lots of Germany, Holland brought lots of fans, Czech brought lots of fans. Poland being very patriotic and passionate. England brought a decent amount of fans, less than they might have done for some other tournaments. At Ireland, fans were fantastic. I thought, 20,000 of them in Poznan, who completely dominated the stadium and were singing away even though they were losing. But loads of empty seats as well, and it's disappointing and interesting. Some tickets are like average price like €30, but in parts of Ukraine that's 10% of the month's salary. So, for us that might be like £150 or something, just picking a number out of the air. And so maybe that explains some of the empty seats. But that's a shame, isn't it? And random people wearing a lot of random fancy dress as well. That's the other thing I noticed. Lots and lots of people like dressed up, and then some random man with a gimp mask on the other night. Very, very scary.
Yes, there's been investigation into that on other football podcasts. The Guardian's Football Daily found out that it's some character called the Phantasm or something.
From a French film from the 60s, yeah.
Any time you're dressing up in fancy dress as a character from a French film in the 60s, there's something a little going on. A little left of centre, let's just say. That sounds weird.
Indeed. TV coverage?
Listen, this is easily, without question, without any shadow of a doubt, the worst tournament in history for co-commentary. And indeed commentary, the days of Barry Davis, and even making me miss John Motson, which is difficult to do because he was a pretty ordinary commentator, old Motty, but at least he got excited. The co-commentary has been absolutely abysmal, actually depressing in some cases. Martin Keown I find to be a very depressing commentator. On opening night, they sprung Mark Bright on us for the opening game of the tournament. That's just wrong.
Just criminal. Of course, the standards have been set by Gary Neville, haven't they? And no one gets anywhere near that. Yeah, I agree. I think the commentary and the co-commentary has been very poor. The BBC on the red button have a no commentary function, which is actually quite nice. I haven't done it all the time, but I did it for a little bit of the game a couple of nights ago, and that's just quite nice, taking some of the atmosphere for a while and don't listen to people whittering on.
Yeah, I have to say that the punditry has not been bad.
The studio punditry's been alright. The funny thing is I'm normally very critical of ITV's coverage, but I think the fact that they've actually got a studio and it feels like there's some atmosphere and they're part of the tournament in some way, even if they're in a square in Warsaw, you can see the stadium behind Roy Keane's scowl, which has been a real feature of the punditry, hasn't it? Roy Keane's scowl. But that has made a difference. And I think the BBC's decision to not spend on having an outside broadcast, simply because the Daily Mail ran a negative piece about the cost of their outside broadcast facility in South Africa, was ridiculous, because they spent about 35 million on media rights for this. Spending another million on having a studio there makes no difference, and penny pinching, and it spoilt their coverage, I think.
Yeah, Alan Shearer in Poland was a particular highlight for me because he looked so happy. I have never in my life, apart from when he's just scored a goal, seen Alan Shearer look that happy. It was really nice. He looked relaxed and actually said some interesting things about the game.
Yeah, some. I do think as a pundit he is like, say what you see. Maybe it's helped him that he doesn't have a screen in front of him, right? So he's actually got to think about what's happened.
Maybe that's what it was. Again, this is relative to the standards set by the man. He's having a good tournament. Clarence Seedorf in the BBC studio is obviously a joy because he's Clarence Seedorf. Doesn't say terribly much, but he just looks very friendly all the time.
And he's kept it awake, which helps, He doesn't always with his punditry, does he? He looks like he's, not to pull any cliches here, but he might have been having a little bit of a toke now and again.
I've really enjoyed Roberto Martinez on ITV's coverage.
Yes. Unfortunately, Adrian Chiles is just terrible. Don't like him at all. I mean, he's gone from, happy-go-lucky sort of guy to just being a bit irritating.
Yeah, I was a fan of Working Lunch. What can I tell you? I used to be a big Adrian Chiles fan, but he's not enjoying. There was one game in the build-up to the Italy game where they just had an Italian man. Essentially, they were in a cafe, and there was three of them there, the three pundits, Strachan, Martinez, and one other, and behind them was sat an Italian man, Emiliano from Milano, and he just basically turned round and joined in with the pundits. It was marvellous.
Can't leave this section without mentioning, of course, the opening game for both of the TV channels. They had at some point to come to the issue of racism, and both of them did exactly the same thing. The presenter said, racism, and then, how do you feel turning to the token black guy in the studio? And I've got to say, that was so crass and so pathetic as a piece of journalism. That really annoyed me.
There's an interesting moment when Gary Lineker said, of course, when the football starts, we can all put that behind us and essentially just summing up the whole societal role of professional sport, which is to distract us all from the real issues.
Yeah, right.
But it's done it extremely well. What's your goal of the tournament so far?
Well, maybe it was Mario Gomez against Holland, lovely spin and turn, or Blažinovski's lovely hit with his left foot against Russia. Maybe those two are my favourites so far.
Those are the exact same ones that I would have picked. So there's been some crackers though. Oh, Pavlyuchenko against Poland.
Yes, thumping goal.
Stunning goal. One thing that's been really disappointing in this tournament, especially with so many of our brothers in Eastern and Central Europe in the tournament, that region has abandoned the mullet like America did in about 1992. The mullet's just gone. The only thing that you could even call a mullet is David Silva's fairly long on the sides and longer on the back.
I claimed that one of the Poles had a mullet, and I was corrected on this and told that a mullet, the definition of a mullet is business on top, party at the back. And there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you're right. Yep. No mullets. Your mullet watch is sadly lacking. So funny, England players all went to the hairdressers, and Wayne Rooney now has this weird kind of 50s kind of quiff thing going on top with the fake hair on top, the stuff that's been plucked out of his bum, and then he's got it shaved around the sides. It's a very, very odd look.
He's basically said, "Hey, can you make me look like David Beckham when he did that thing with the Olympic torch?" And the barber's gone, "Can't really." He said, "If I give you like 300 quid, can you pretend?" And the barber's gone, "All right, I will then," and sort of piled his pretend hair up as best he could. One of the worst haircuts in human history.
Yes, not a mullet, but still pretty embarrassing.
So, talking of Wayne Rooney, he will be back in action for England before we reconvene to do another one of these, I believe.
Twice, yeah. So, just the once. Yeah, he'll be back, but yeah, England will be playing twice before we reconvene. And so, by the time we are with you again next week, England will have played twice, and they'll probably be out the tournament.
Yeah, so I think in lieu of picking games and previewing them, we've gone quite long already. Let's just go through the groups and pick our two teams that are going to qualify from each group.
All right, Group A, I'm going to say Russia and Poland.
Yeah, me too. Same.
Group B, I think it'll be Portugal and Germany.
It's a tricky one, but there's a possibility that Denmark and Germany could draw, taking them both through. I don't see that because it's going to really rely on the way the other game goes. So yeah, okay, no, I'm with you.
They could fix it, yeah. There's been some talk about this, yeah. Group C, I can't look, I mean, obviously, in lieu of today's games, I can't see beyond Italy and Spain.
No, me neither. And as I said earlier, I think Italy have become my weird pick to win the tournament. I don't know why I think that, but
Croatia have got a chance in this group.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I just think Italy and Spain will have too much for Croatia.
Yep, and in Group D, I think France and Ukraine are going to go through. I mean, I don't want to be accused of being unpatriotic here. England being the country of my birth and where I live.
You're unpatriotic. That's not an accusation, because patriotism is not a virtue. You're not a patriotic man. This is not a bad thing.
Here's my prediction. It's slightly different from my pre-tournament prediction was England would lose to France and draw with Sweden and draw with Ukraine. I actually think now England have got a draw with France. I think England will draw with Sweden. Haven't beaten them competitively since 1968, remember? And I think England, needing to beat Ukraine, will lose.
Oh, it's dramatic. I think that England and France are going to go through. I feel like maybe they can beat Sweden. But if they don't, I'm not going to be too sad about it. If I'd sort of almost rather Sweden went through than the Ukraine. Have the Polish in for some home ties later in the tournament. But Sweden have Zlatan, and we got a lot of Swedish listeners. I guess we got more English listeners, but still.
We have a very international audience.
We do. I'd quite like Sweden, though, generally. I like ABBA and IKEA and stuff. And Zlatan. Those are the three things that you think of when you think of Sweden, right?
Well, and the Swedish Chef off the Muppets, obviously.
Yeah, Bork.
Well, on that highly analytical and detailed point, I think we should call it a day for this week's show, and we'll be back with you for a third version of the Eurocast next week and find out whether any of our predictions actually came true and whether Spain will play a striker or any defenders. And I reckon they might become the first team in history to play a 0-10-0 formation.
Beautiful.
At some point in this tournament.
It'd be great if they do. I'm just absolutely loving the tournament so far. I've really got into this in a way I haven't got into a tournament for a really long time. It's just been a treat, a festival of football. There's been so much entertaining football on display and so many teams that look like they could promise something, and a few teams that look really outstanding, particularly Germany. And yeah, it's just been great. And I think for me, there's a kind of relief in pressure of not having any expectation around England. It makes the tournament more enjoyable as a person who is in England, not to be kind of constantly bombarded everywhere you go with the St George's Cross and the kind of, "Oh, our brave boys, up and at 'em" sort of mentality. It's nice not to have that surrounding a tournament. Makes it kind of slightly more easygoing affair, and been loving it.
Yes, and England fans haven't caused any trouble yet, which is always good. Well, we'll be back with you next week. I've enjoyed it. Hope you've been enjoying the football, and we'll be with you in a week's time.
Start wearing purple, wearing purple. Start wearing purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. So yeah. Start wearing purple, wearing purple. Start wearing purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. I know you since you were at 20. I was 20 and thought that some years from now a purple little lady will be perfect for dirty old and useless clown. So yeah, start wearing purple, wearing purple. Start wearing purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. I know it all from Diogenes to the Foucault, from Ложечкин to Passepartout.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.